You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to the Win-Win podcast. This is Ben Wolf. As always, your host. We're going to talk about 10Xing your leadership team. Not talking about quantity, 10Xing your leadership team, but 10Xing the quality of your leadership team. Our guest today is Thomas Hoover. He is one of the members of our team at Wolf's Edge Integrators. This podcast, Win-Win, is the official podcast of Wolf's Edge Integrators, team of fractional COOs, number two leaders that have been where the business owners that we work with want to go, and so that's why these people are able to help get them there. They've ran and owned businesses larger than our clients' businesses before, and so before we get into this context and this topic of 10Xing your leadership team and introducing Thomas Hoover, I want to ask Thomas Hoover himself to introduce himself, give us a little 2-minute background kind of on where you came from and how we got to be talking about this today, a little history of you.
Sure. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate you letting me on your podcast again. And I really do enjoy it. And I enjoy, listening to your podcast too. So it's always informative and there's always nuggets to be gleaned from you and your guest and what you're able to do. And it's a wonderful addition, to our firm, the Wolf's Edge firm. And I just appreciate what you do. So quick background on me. I've owned, operated, bought, sold, several businesses. And, throughout that experience, you learn the pains and the agonies of, and the thrills and successes of owning a business and getting to do those things in this wonderful, country that we live in. And, throughout that, some of the pains, and failures were also, unfortunately, some of our greatest learning experiences. Right. And that's what you try to do. You always try to learn, you always try to glean, and you always try to grow. And so through that, I had grown up one of my companies into a really good regional company for the United States. And then whenever one of the national players, actually the largest national player, did not have a footprint in this 5-state area that I was in. And so when they wanted to have that footprint there, they came and, knocking on my door. We had made a deal. They had bought us, and I stayed on for about 9 months with them and helped that transition so that my staff and of course their company, that everybody be getting a good deal. I wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of properly. And after about 9 or 10 months, I decided that, I needed to move on. And so I did. And had a friend of mine handed me the book Traction. And he said, "Hey, I'm having trouble really getting my company off the ground, and I need some help punching through the ceiling." And we had known each other for a while, and he was definitely visionary, and I was definitely an integrator after reading that book. And so I went to go help him break through that ceiling and take his company to the next level. And sure enough, 4 years later, the company did grow, 10X, not the leadership team, but the company grew 10X. And it was just a really cool journey. I had not been able to be a part of something like that before. And that's whenever I became a true believer in business systems and EOS specifically. And so it was a wonderful ride. And through that, I had started meeting a lot of other business owners. Of course, I had known a lot just from being one. And we were always talking and asking questions. And I was using all these different techniques from Collins and Lencioni and from, Gina Wickman and all that to help them, solve their issues and get to their next level. And so throughout that, I actually became an EOS implementer. And after a couple of years of being an EOS implementer, I'm an integrator by heart. I'm just through and through, pure. I'm very much an integrator. And so whenever EOS went to the franchise model, I just decided, you know what, I should just stick with being an integrator. And I was doing some fractional integrator work for my clients already. And so I stuck with that. And whenever they went to the franchise model, I opted out and just continued to continue my relationships with all of our implementer friends. And I really enjoy doing what I do and getting to work with leadership teams and uh, and getting to help them grow and do what they reach their goals and just succeed. That's where that's and so whenever I had that opportunity, met you a few years ago at that meeting and right before the franchising happened, and you said, "Hey, let's team up," and I'm like, Yes, yes, please, let's do that." And it's been a wonderful ride.
That's awesome. And when you and I want to get into what you just said about about helping those leadership teams. Could you tell a story? Like tell us like a story example with as much details as you can, as many details as you can on like 10xing a leadership team, right? What was the quality performance
Mhm.
of one of the leadership teams that you work with? What was going on in the business? What did you do with them? As I want people to like be able to see something they can learn from in this story, right? And like what were the things that you brought to bear? What happened that helped a leadership team 10x in quality? Now, again, that could be through improving the existing people,
Mhm.
maybe bringing on new people, changing people. I don't know what, but tell me a story. Tell us a story.
Sure. Oh man, details. you know,
I
and
love
when you're an integrator, you
details
just
help
kind of
bring
broad
stories to
swipe things
life.
and just expect people just to understand. And that's one of the things we work on constantly, right? But you know, the 10x in the leadership team, I like the way you say that because we talk about 10x and most people think it's, hey, let's take $1 million business to 10 million. And there's something to that, right? I mean, that is what one of the big aims is. But what I found, you said 10x in the leadership team, and I love that because that's where I have found our greatest success with our clients is helping 10x the leadership team. And it's one of the surprise joys of what we get to do that I have found is getting to lead leadership teams and help them find new levels of success. And which leads to that 10x for the company that of course, business owners are searching for, right? So what I found is that every leadership team I've ever worked with, and of course we've worked with dozens, right? Every leadership team I've worked with, uh, they always, 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 always have room to grow. Every single one of them, and I'm talking about the members of the leadership team, not just the team as a whole, but each individual member. I have yet to encounter someone on the leadership team that just didn't have anywhere else to grow or any way that they could be better, and most of them also desire that. They actually, because they most of these people are true leaders and they want growth. They want those things to be better, and they're constantly seeking that because that's how they're built. And so, it's been a great joy to be able to do that and go in and help these individual members and the team as a whole, grow in their approach to business, their leadership styles, their ability to raise up other leaders in their departments, all these talents they always had in them, but they just didn't know that they had. And with the details that we're talking about, of course, I believe in consistent, effective meetings. Having your meetings, making sure that we stay coordinated with each other, and then also the weekly one-on-ones with each individual member of every leadership team. And you use those meetings to make sure that they are staying focused. What are we doing today? What are we doing for this week? What are we doing for this month, for the quarter? Because it's all aimed at our yearly and long-term goals, right? And so we
Well,
want to
and
make sure that.
can you put what you're saying also in the context of a specific story, like a specific company's leadership team?
Oh yeah, for sure. So to be specific, we've had a story that you and I've talked about several times where I walked in to a company, and on the very first day we were having one of our quarterly sessions where you discuss the past quarter and you get everything ready for the next 3 months. And I walked in, it was my very first day with the company, and they had completed 1 out of 10 rocks, just one. And I think there was like 2 or 3 of the dozen to-dos were done. I mean, there wasn't a lot accomplished leading into this very important meeting for our yearly success, as a quarterly meeting. And you look around, you're like, oh, what are we doing? What are the members of the team doing? What do they understand how important this is? what is going on with this company, because the company was being successful, quote unquote, right, air quotes, and but it wasn't the people, it was the direction and the focus. And so that's exactly what they needed. And it was a pretty cool ride, that 2 years later, and that we had never had less than 90% completion rate after that, ever, not from that day on. And you work with these people, day in, day out, weekly, monthly. And with this specific team, it was really cool, because you would think that this was a very dysfunctional team when you walk in and you hear those numbers right up front. But when we stopped 2 years later, not only did we have those completion rates, but because of those completion rates, we hit our 3-year goal at that 2-year mark. And I'm talking about all the measurables. I'm talking about revenue goals, profit goals, the other measurables that we were using to determine our success. We hit our 3-year goals in the 2 years, and every single member of that team, we didn't lose a single one. Every single member of that team, not only did they stay on the team, but they were a part of that success. So there was no one on the team when we started that was having that very poor success rate that wasn't there when we finished. And that was one of the things that I look back now, I'm like, man, that is just a really excellent example of, most people on these teams have more talent than they're able to use. They just need to be shown how to use it. And so helping them, stay focused and to see it day after day and week after week, remember where your focus is, and just really retraining, the way they're thinking about what they're doing, and helping them, be, what they have in them, and showing them that they have extra talents in them, and doing some leadership discussions and some leadership trainings. It grows them, and they're able to do that. As a matter of fact, and I don't think you know this, but we just had an annual session with one of our companies, and we looked back with the implementer, because they were on EOS and they were using an implementer to implement EOS. And he looked back, and they only had a 25% success rate whenever we started with their rocks and getting to their goals. And this last annual, we had a 100% success rate, or completion rate on our rocks, and hit every goal for the year. When you list out what does this look like and all the things that we have to have accomplished in order to be where we say we want to be in a year, every single one of them. It was a 100% rock completion and 100% goal completion for the year. And you look back, and because I tell my clients all the time, hey, you're going to do all the work and I'm going to take all the credit. And so I tell them that, and of course that's just not true, but I get a lot of credit because my clients are thankful, and I appreciate that from them. But man, they work hard, and they just do a good job. And like I said, same thing, the exact same team that we started with, we have today. We did add a member. We did add that member of that team, and I know you asked a little bit about that too. But everybody else on the team are the people that we started with. And yet look at this difference in completion and success level that we have, right?
Right. So 10xing and that quality of the team.
Yeah.
What has happened where I'm sure it's happened where you've had leadership team members who were not able to 10x, right? They weren't able to rise to the occasion for whatever reason. What has happened then? How have you approached it?
So, whenever you look at things like that, usually, people think, well, if someone's not right for that position, that you need to show them the exit door. And I've actually found that very, very seldom, Ben. Very, very seldom do you have to show them the exit door. There's been a couple of those. Obviously, you work with enough people, eventually you're going to find someone who just doesn't, either they're not the right person for the company, they just don't fit with the company's culture or their objectives, or they're not in the right seat. They just don't have the talent. They should have never been in that seat, and they don't have the talent to be in that seat. But what I have found more often is that you have people that actually have some pretty good talent, but when you're trying to 10x, they don't have the capacity to go to 10x. So, quite honestly, the first company I was talking about, where we hit our 3-year goal in 2 years, everybody on that team when we finished in 2 years was who we started with. But at that moment, one of the members, thought he wanted to be, one of the C-level people and move up from his department, into that C-level seat. until he found out what that C-level seat really entailed. And he's like, I don't want to do this. But he was excellent at the seat that he was hired into and that he was
Right.
actually doing. He was filling a little bit higher role because we didn't have anybody in that role. So he was stepping up. Kudos to him. But once he figured out what that role was really about, he's like, no, I think I'd rather just stay where I'm and he's excellent at that role. I mean, just and not only was he already excellent, but he 10x'd in his own seat. But once he saw what that other seat was about, he's like, yeah, I'm going to be here. And so he actually, stayed in his position and said, you find someone else to come and do this. And so he actually removed himself from the leadership team, the company's leadership team, and just stayed on, his department's leadership team, obviously. And it was a great, I've actually found that more often than not. Had a great lady, believe this, it was when the company was when she came onto the company, it was a few $1,000,000. I think it was $4 or $5 million when she started with the company as an office manager, and kind of just absorbed the role of what a general manager or COO would be. And under the owner and her leadership, grew the company to $30 million. I mean, this is not
Wow.
bad COO work for a quote unquote office manager, right? I mean, just an amazing lady. But when we got to the $30 million mark, that's when they engaged me, because she just, once we got through talking, she's like, I'm just not the person that wants to take this to that 50 and $80 million mark. And that's where the company is going, right? They're blowing and going this year. It's a great company. But so she didn't leave the company. She just said, this is the role that I'd like to see myself in. And it wasn't that COO, second in command, role. And she did. She
Right.
she said, this is the role that I'd like. And we worked through it. And then we went and hired someone that has that experience, that 80, $100 million experience,
Right.
and knows what
I
that
got to
looks
meet him. I got to meet him at the last EOS conference
yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah, and he's a really great guy, and I mean, he's just serious. But the lady too, and I'm just like, man, what a wonderful lady. I mean, I just absolutely adore her.
Yeah.
And you look at this, and you hire someone as an office manager, right? And she basically COOs a $30 million, growth. How much
Yeah.
talent was there that she just had to you
Yeah.
had to bring it out of her. And you
Yeah. It's
see things I
amazing.
see that more often, and
Right.
and people saying, "You know what, man, I've helped you grow this to this level, but I'm just not the person to go to the next one." And
Right.
I've actually seen that more than the people that that you come on and start
Yeah.
helping and showing them, and
No,
you have to go,
definitely.
"Oh, you don't fit here. You got to go." That just
Right.
I actually see that more often than the other. I've had a couple of people also, they leave before I start. Once they see what's getting ready to happen and they don't want to do it and they don't want to put in the work, they leave. So that happens, but more often than
Right.
not, I've been really pleased that the people, they're real leaders and they actually care. They're good people, and they just say, you know what, this other position that we're growing into is just not for me. And
Right. And I
they
want
want
and
to
I
be
want
where
people
they're
to
happy and successful.
and I want people to be able to see some of the mechanics necessary so they can learn, hey, how can I help elevate my leadership team as well?
Sure.
And but before I even ask about that, I just, I do resonate with some of the stories you were telling about, elevating people. I've got one client I'm working with where, I'm in the process of transitioning out right after, it should be about
Yeah.
a year and a half in, we'll
Mhm.
be transitioning someone else into the long-term integrator role. But this person who we're gonna, who we're working on preparing and getting ready to transition into the role in a couple of months is started as the assistant to the CEO
Mhm.
and then ended up just showing himself to be and started taking on bigger and bigger projects and
Right.
started showing himself capable, ended up becoming the chief of staff, so still not COO,
Mm.
but really helping the CEO do all aspects of the CEO's job, and then took over head of HR and is involved in like all hiring and like people development within the business. And now, the entire leadership team is on board with the idea that, yeah, we're working now towards transitioning him now into the integrator role, and feel confident, even though it sounds crazy. The guy is 23 years old. He's
Hmm.
going to have direct reports on the leadership team that are 50,
Hmm.
some of them, or whatever, but like, a wide range of ages. There's another woman on the leadership team who started off who started off as a regular customer service representative. And then by the time I had gotten there, she was already a team leader within that department. But then after I had started with them, took on the head of operations role, which has been over a year now in that role.
Hmm.
And well, and it just is still there. But I mean, and it's continuing to grow as a manager, as a leader, as a professional. And but started off as a frontline customer service person, and now as
Hmm.
head of operations, right? So you definitely find these diamonds in the rough. And I guess I want to ask you so that people can see, see their own stories and their own examples in it. What are some of the practical things that mechanically you have done with these leadership team members to help them 10x, to like elevate into the role, to be the people that the business needs them to be, or the future business needs them to be, right? Maybe not even where they are now, but where they want to be.
Yeah, sure. So, we talk about the meeting pulse, making sure that you stay on target, but there's training in that, and you should be intentional about it. What are we doing to make sure that they understand that there's growth in what we're doing. There's so many, and you've got some of them behind you. So many great books and things that you can do about where you have the 10x book behind you, who not how, and you can have the five dysfunctions of the team, and there's so many good how to be a great boss is one of the especially for managers, anybody that manages anybody. I think it's a very good foundational training book for anybody that manages people. Um, and so you take some of those lessons and you start implementing them intentionally with your teams, and asking questions just like what you're asking. How do we do that, realistically? What are you going to do to implement this nugget that you've learned this week? What are you going to do this week to make this to use that to help your staff, to help the people that you're managing, and being really intentional about that. And then I also make sure you had said something about, and I love what you said, that this new integrator is just young, and with youth is inexperience, all the talent in the world. So I had one not as young. She was in her younger 30s, and one of the purest natural integrators, COO type minds that I've met, but she was just young. And so what I and say and with your if I had heard that story, I would have advised you, let's go to the rest of the leadership team, especially the ones that are 50 and they're way too old to answer to a 20-year-old, right? Or a 30-year-old, and challenge them. If you're truly a leader, what are you doing to make sure that this person's successful? Because that's the way, as leaders, that's how we should look at it. It's not just about our success. I mean, that's part of it, but really, how do I help Ben be successful? I mean, as a leader, I'm looking at my leader going, okay, am I doing what I need to do to fill my role in the spot on Wolf's Edge Integrators? But past that, okay, Wolf's Edge Integrators will be successful, but how can I help Ben be successful? And then I look at the rest of the people on the team. That's what leaders should be doing, right? That should be our mindset. If you're a leader, you're actually in the purest sense, not the selfish sense, but the purest sense. How do we help other people be successful? And how do we focus on those things? Not only are we helping our people on our team be successful, then you look around at your peers. You say, how do I'm in sales, but how can I help operations be successful? How can I help HR be successful? There are things that we can do to make sure we're setting our peers up for success, and certainly not sabotaging them. But then you look up, and sometimes it's hard, and how do I help the people above me be successful? But there's always ways to do it, and sometimes it's just a matter of making sure you're promoting them in the way that they should be. And how common is it? An easy example is HR are all those the people at the top just want more money, and you can disseminate that. Go, hey, we're actually very lucky to have the leadership that we have. These are great people and they care about us. you can accentuate the positives and promote people in a way that you go, you know what, matter of fact, I don't hate Ben. I want to emulate Ben. And if you're promoting people in that way, and your peers and your group, and not in a false way, but in a real way, you know, if you're doing that and you're leading people, I mean, that's when you can't do great things without great people, right? That's the saying. That's the business saying. 100% true. So if you want to do great things, you've got to have great people. And it's not just the people you manage, it's the people around you. How do we promote that? Because they are also called self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If Ben hears about what a great leader he is over and over and over again, as long as Ben's doing what he's supposed to be doing and it's not fake, right? And you're not. And so please, hope everybody hears me that. But if you hear it enough, you'll start to, whenever you do have those trying times, you'll go, wait a minute, I'm a great leader. Great leaders don't do the second option. So I'm picking option A. I'm going to stick with option A. And so, and if you're doing that and you're leading from the top, if you're leading from the side and you're leading from below, that way, you will promote that underneath you. And everybody can do that. Everybody can. You can be a leader no matter where you're at in the company, right? But especially whenever you take one of those seats, it's time to really start focusing on those things and making sure that you're helping other people grow too.
Right. It's a very salient lesson in terms of, to any member of a leadership team who wants to 10x themselves, to focus not just on themselves, but promoting, elevating, supporting.
You can't 10x yourself without 10xing everybody around you.
Wow.
I was just saying, you can't do great things. 10xing yourself, that's a great thing. Can't do great things without great people. So surround yourself with great people.
Right.
And one of the ways to make them great is for you to make them great.
That's beautiful. I mean, one last thought particularly for owners or for integrators, COOs, and leadership teams listening to or watching this. What's the, one last message that you would leave them with when they want to think about, how do I take what maybe I might feel right now is an underperforming leadership team or some underperformed leadership team members, and I want to 10x them. I want to elevate this team, these people, possibly other people, but elevate this team to be 10x of what it currently is, so that it can be the leadership team that my future company needs it to be. What's one message that you would leave with these owners and integrators of these businesses?
If you don't feel like someone's performing or not up to the level that you want them to, then you need to clearly define what that level is. What is it that you truly expect? What does that look like? What are the roles that they should be completing or doing, and even the one, especially the ones that they're not, right? But clearly defining what that looks like in your head. You can't just say, I just don't feel like, you could feel that way, and that's fine.
What does that mean?
But what does that mean, and what does that look like? And then have an open, honest conversation with that person. This is actually what I'm looking for, and being clear with them, give them the opportunities to succeed. One of my biggest frustrations, and I tell people this all the time, I can't fix something if I don't know that it's broken, right? And none of us can. And so if something's not right, tell me, especially if it's me, because otherwise I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, because I'm a very process driven guy, and I'm very open to change. But if I have a process that I think is working, I'm going to keep hammering that process over and over and over because it works. I mean, that's just common sense. It's sanity. But I tell them, hey, figure out what that looks like, and let's have an open, honest conversation with them. And you don't have to beat people up to show them, but if you show them, hey, this is what I think that it should look like, and this is, we're not hitting all these goals, and then help them. What can we do, to get to the level and what I'm showing you, what I see as success, and let them tell you, and then ask them. And this is the most important one. This is one that I think the question that most people miss. How can I help you get to those goals? because this is something I say to myself and I say to all my leadership teams. I want them to succeed. Do we truly want them to succeed and get to what we're saying is our objective for that role? And if the answer is yes, and it should be, otherwise, then what are we doing? I want them to succeed. And so if they fail, it's not going to be because of me. So what can I do to help you? Now, I can't want it more than you do. If I'm trying to get you to do it,
Right.
you've got to want it at least as much as I want you to want it. So I can't want it more than you do. But if you do, I certainly don't want to be an obstacle. But is there any way that I can help you get to that next step? Just like I said, doing some leadership training, do you need anything that I can help you with to help you get to complete some of those steps and fulfill those roles? And that should be the last question that we ask. How can I help you get there? A lot of people
Right.
want to say this is all, oh, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I've just got to put my big boy pants on and go do it. There's a lot of truth to that. But as your leader and someone who cares and wants you to succeed, how can I help you do that? And
Right.
that
How
should
can I
be the last
support?
question that we ask, and then of course follow through and do what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Because as leaders,
So,
that's part of the leadership game.
right. That's awesome. So make sure to be clear that it's not this mystery, this mind reading
Yeah.
experiment. It's clear what the expectations are, what success looks like. That takes work, right? You can't just
Takes a lot
expect the
of work.
person to be psychic, and then have an open and honest, adult, mature conversation with the person, clearly
Mhm.
clearly expressing what it is. And then, as you said, make sure that I, as the person's manager, uh, you know, am doing whatever I can to support and give them the tools they need to be successful in
I've never
achieving
once
that role.
I've never once seen that not be a very good thing for the company.
Right.
Never once. Even if someone didn't want to do the things they needed to improve, great. Now we can find someone who wants to fill those roles, right? Because they don't want to fill the roles. Well, I mean, that's the job. So if you
Right.
don't want to do it,
Go
then
through the
okay,
exercise.
great. Let's find someone who will do it. And like I said, more often than not, the person wants to step up and try to fill that role. And it
Right.
is great because then you see people grow. And man, when people grow and succeed, that's one of and I know not everybody feels this way, and I get kind of sappy about it. Man, it's kind of like being a proud dad when your kids do something that's just like, oh my goodness, I've raised a functional human, you know, and not
Functional
only a functional
adult,
human, but someone who's actually contributes
independent.
to society in a very good way. And
Right.
and and whenever you do that as a leader in your business, it's a little bit of the same thing. I don't want to belittle it or say it the wrong way. So forgive me if I'm not saying this the right way. But man, when you see someone that you've kind of just said, hey, this is what we're looking for, and they take that on and they succeed. I mean, who's not happy about that? You're happy, they're happy, the company's happy because of course it's always good for the company, right? Whenever things like
Yeah.
that happen. And I mean, that's just a great success, and that's people success. And
That's awesome.
it is. And of course, what do they say? Money isn't everything, but it does buy everything. So money, businesses are run by the bottom line a lot of times. And so money's important, but if you find those people and you get them to be successful, especially fulfilling the roles that are necessary to create that bottom line, what do they say? When you have happy employees, you have efficient employees, and the business will start. That's where some of that the magic, quote unquote, of the 10x comes from
Right.
on the business side, is from
I heard
promoting those
somebody
people.
I heard somebody recently say, "No mission without margin."
That's it. Yeah, I
No
love that.
mission, no mission without margin.
Well, I
Well,
mean, if we
I
don't make
appreciate
money, we
this.
can't continue to employ people, and if you can't employ
Right,
people, then they're gonna have to go and have their growth somewhere else. So, but
right,
yeah, 100%. But whenever you grow your people, you can't do great things without great people. So as you get these great people and you change from good to great, to steal the Collins line, good to great, you steal that. And that if we're doing that and focused on our positions and still doing our not just self-help, but we're growing ourselves as people in the business, all that other stuff will, if you have a good business model, it'll grow. It'll grow. If you 10x your people, that's your fastest, best way to get to 10x for your company.
All right. Awesome. Well, I appreciate this, Tom. And look, if anybody else out there wants to understand what kind of integrator, what kind of number two leader they need to be able to 10x their leadership team, I would encourage people to take the MOA assessment. That's on our website, wolfsedgeintegrators.com. That'll pop up there. If you go to that website, wolfsedgeintegrators.com, the MOA assessment will tell you, depending on where your stage of business growth is currently at, what stage of business growth you want to get to, in what timeline, it'll tell you what kind of integrator or number two leader you have, if it's a type that'll get you where you need to go, and what kind of integrator or COO you need to get where you say you want to go and the timeline you say you want to get there. So that's going to be some clarity that hopefully you can get. wolfsedgeintegrators.com. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you making the time to come on.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. I always appreciate seeing you and talking to you, and in this format even better. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And everybody else, we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.